All right, thanks for coming, guys. As you probably guessed, I'm Mitch Brooks. Thanks for coming, obviously. Thanks to Fishermans for putting this on. And the way this came about actually was last spring. I had the managers for Fishermans. We were out spring Chinook fishing, and they asked if I would do a seminar, and if I did, what would be the species of topic. And they said, every season as it approaches is like my favorite. As I get geared up for the next season, I look forward to it. I'm amped up. It's my favorite season. So, but if you were to eliminate all the rest, if I could only chase one fish ever again in my life, it would be a steelhead. But absolutely my favorite fish that swims. So a little bit of backstory on myself. I grew up, my dad had a place about a 5-minute walk from the North Umpqua River. So I kind of cut my teeth drift fishing, casting spoons and spinners. And those were like the 3 techniques that I kind of started with. And, I'd catch a fish here and there, but I never really got great at it until I learned a few little tactics and some I'll call them formulas. It's not really a math formula, but it's some formulas that I learned through the years that helped me to put myself in front of what I call the biomass. Not just a fish here, a fish there. I want to catch 5, 10, 15, 20 in a day, right? That's what you guys want to do. That's, I'm sure, you're not here to go look at a river, which is fun, right? It's kind of the part of it, but you want to put up numbers. You want to catch fish. That's what we're going to try to put together today. So I got some various water conditions we're going to go over. But as I kind of go back on my backstory again, when I would start to put these things together, this is kind of a grim way to put it, kind of an illustration, but a really good homicide detective, what makes him so good? Let's make this interactive. What do you guys think? What makes a good homicide detective? Good. Okay, that's a good one. How about getting inside the head of the killer? Once you get inside the head of a killer, you could be one step ahead of him, right? Now you're thinking like that killer. You can put yourself in, you're going to catch more killers. Same with fishing. You start to get inside of the head of a steelhead, understand how they work, how they migrate. Then you can kind of put yourself in front of them, and you're going to know better on these tactics or these various water conditions and where in the water section of the river you're going to fish for their migration, right? So a couple of things that I've learned that I kind of dove into the heads of steelhead and learned about them. For one, super fast, super crazy fast. Goes with our trivia question, but they'll cover 0 to 26.5 feet in 1 second, which is approximately 35 miles per hour. Fast fish. One of the fastest freshwater fish that swims. So some interesting facts about them. Now their migration, they'll cover 3 to 24 miles in 1 day. Now that's a really broad spectrum, right? 3 to 24 that's a huge difference. So what's going to play a factor, and this is where I started to put together this formula that helped me put myself in front of more fish. Because 3 to 24 miles, that's bottom of the river or the upper stretches of some of our coastal rivers, right? It's a huge difference. So I started to fish. This is going to go a little off for a second, but it's going to come to accumulation of a big punchline. So I started to fish the mouth of a lot of our coastal rivers and bays, looking at the ocean basically for salmon, spring chinook, fall chinook. And as I got into summer, I would just completely investigate these bays and the mouths of them. And you start to learn at the bottom of a low tide, the sandbars, and this is the escapement for a fish, right? They're going to come in off the ocean, compared on tides, how low that tide is, how high that tide is, water conditions up in the river, temperature. There's all these factors that allow fish to get upriver either 3 miles in a day or 24 miles a day. So these are the factors I started to learn as I fished the mouths of these rivers. And so as we started to get into these various high water, the steelhead green, which is everybody calls the ideal condition, and then we drop into the low clear, is going to affect how fast or slow a fish migrates upstream. So when we get into the bottom end of that 3 miles a day, you probably have a really high CFS pushing against them, and they're not going to want to push into mud basically up the river very fast. Another factor is ocean conditions. When you have really rough bars, and then you have really huge tide exchanges, on a really big outgoing tide that's pushing against a really rough bar, fish are not really likely to push over that bar very quickly. So these are factors I started to look into, and I started to realize how fast a fish is going to migrate, then I can choose the section of a river that I'm going to go target to look for not that one or two, but that biomass, that 15, 20 fish day. That's what I'm always chasing. And so I'm going to tell you a quick little story. I had a buddy of mine, this is years ago, buddy of mine, it was a little bit between the steelhead green and the low clear water, pretty ideal conditions, leaning more towards the low clear. And he put in way up at the top of this river. And I put in pretty low, and I kind of had this formula in my mind where I'm putting myself in front of the biomass, right? This is my target. And so I put in, I fished. He texted me about, I don't know, it was like 12:30 or so. He's like, oh, I'm only 1 for 2. I hooked one, and I got one, and I lost one. He's like, how you doing? I was like, I just cleaned our limit, and I got one for myself. He's like, what? And so it's not a pat on my back, but he called me later that night, or texted me that night. He's like, what in the world were you doing? I'm like, nothing different than you were. I just put myself in the biomass. I asked him, did you look at the ocean condition? Did you look at the tide? Did you look at the river level compared to those things, and to see how far is the migration of fish going to make it in that day? And this is like the beginning of the season, right? So these are going to be big formulas you want to look at, especially beginning of the season. As we get to the mid and late season, fish are going to be everywhere, right? They start to spread out. And there's other factors like acclimation points on rivers. So where fish are dumped, you got fish that will return closer to that area, so you can kind of keep that in mind with the system that you're fishing, things like that. So we're going to get right into these 3: high water, steelhead green, and low clear. And since I thought, what's the most relevant going on right now? What do we have right now? High water, right? We're up there, like we're flood stage in a lot of the coastal rivers, and it's sad for what's happening to people, but there's actually good things when we have these big December high water events. It's really good for what's coming after this. January, February, it's going to bring a lot of fish in, depending on our return. But big high water events in December like this, excellent. Really good to see. So let's get into it on tactics for high water. This is the one, these two, I'll say, high water and low water, tend to scare people the most. Everybody's looking for this one. They see the steelhead green on the weekend, and you know what happens on this right here? How many fishermen are going out on a weekend with this? Huh? It's loaded, right? So what do you have on that? You got pressure. So we'll get into this also. It's a great time to chase them, but I want to get you in your guys' mind not to be so afraid of this or this, because I catch a lot more fish sometimes on these two, because it'll push fish in very specific locations. Where steelhead green, a lot of times you got traveling fish and then they're pressured, and so that's when they're pushing in this ideal condition. Who's it ideal for? It's ideal for the fish to migrate fast. When they got that steelhead green water, average flows, good ocean conditions, the tides are just right, they're boogieing. That's when they get up to that 24 miles in a day. They're flying. So relevant to our time right now, we're going to start with high water tactics. How many guys here are drift boat or bank fishermen, or both? I mean, everybody kind of a drift boat or bank fishermen? Bank? A lot of bank fishermen? Okay. Just so I get an idea to help you guys, I'm going to go over both because we're live also for boat tactics too, or if you guys get a boat. But just basically, one thing we want to learn about in high water, you got a lot of, we'll call this, you might know this or may not, but CFS. It's cubic feet per second. That's how fast the river's flowing. As we climb, like we got a little river gauge here, as we climb to the top of this, the CFS, or the cubic feet per second of water, climbs really fast. And so in the middle of the river, or this is what's called the head of the hole. This is the meat of the hole, and these are the tail out right here. This is the tail out. So as that CFS pushes really hard on a high water event, it's gonna push fish out of the center, the head, and the meat of this, because that's where all that water is dumping into. The center of the river is going to be so fast and so much sediment that they don't want to sit in it. So they're going to lean more towards structure like this, towards the very back of the tail out or the very soft edge of the river. So you guys that are at the bank, you walk up to a hole, and out in the middle of the river is just flying, right? It's cooking. And you got maybe some structure here, some structure in the tail out. those fish will literally sometimes be 2 to 3 feet off of your feet, right there, really close to the bank, within 5 to 10, maybe here to young man here. So you'll be casting 10, 15, 20 feet in walking speed water, right? You get out there in the middle, your stuff's blowing by. It's gone. So high water events, we're going to be fishing towards the back end of the tail out where you got a lot of water rushing into here, into the head. And as we get to the lowest section right here, you could be in a foot or two of water in the back of this, but it has the least amount of flow. And also on the inside edges, right at your feet, literally right at your feet. So we're going to start getting into some tactics also. Who all here, let me hear some tactics from you guys. What do you guys usually run? Spinners. Okay, I like that. That's a good one. I'm going to get into the rest of these water conditions, but it's a good high water. It's also a good low clear water. I love spinners. I kind of grew up drift fishing, spinners, spoons. It's one of my favorite ways to catch one. It's just an aggressive, hammer down bite. So anybody else, what do you got?
Eggs.
What's that?
Egg fishing,
Eggs, bait. Okay, nice. That's
Usually just rubber eggs.
Oh, beads? Like beads, eggs? Okay. Clusters, yeah, things like that. Artificials, yeah. Good techniques. What's your name, sir?
John.
Little John. Okay, come on up, John. We got a giveaway right here. You write your name. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but little trivia question. You write your name, and there's write your answer right next to it. There's a little giveaway towards the end of the seminar. So thanks for coming, John. So high water. We're talking about the soft edges, the tail outs, deep in the back. Spinners. What's your name again? Wyatt. I don't think I got it. Sorry. Yeah. One of my favorites, number 5, Blue Fox, that purple body, chrome blade right there. Super efficient. I'm going to hand these out to you. As I go around through each tactic, you can take a look at the way I have these set up and the way I like to fish them. Baits. You just hand them back, yeah. A good old Yarny and egg. So this is set up on a slip float. Anybody bobber dog before? You want to get into it?
I want to know more about it.
Okay. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. This is a great tactic for high water. Spinner is another one. Really similar to drift fishing is what you do with the spinner, but bobber dogging basically, you want your. Let's start with my main line. I got about a 50-pound braid main line here. I do an inline knot. I do a uni to a 20-pound monofilament bumper. And I got about 15 feet of that down to my next swivel. And then my bobber dog and float here. What this is going to do is essentially going to point downstream like a little missile like that. And the flat bottom of the back of this, that current's going to push the back of this and kind of plows that lead as it slips down to the bottom. That's going to help push your gear along the bottom as this weight is. You don't want to be dragging or dredging it, but that weight's going to be down there kind of ticking. And then your gear. One thing I will tell you is I don't really like to run a double setup, but I do have this for seminar purposes, so you can see how you can, if you're by yourself, especially on the bank, you can run 2 setups so you give the fish a little more to look at, right? From a boat, for me, I'm running 3 guys at a time, so I'll generally just run 1 offering because that way people aren't tangling up and it keeps them fishing effectively for longer. So anyway, this is a bobber dogging setup here. And so that weight's going to be down there ticking, and then these offerings are going to be down really close to the bottom. And when you're bobber dogging, your weight's actually going to be heavier, so your lighter presentation is going to be coming at the fish straight like this because it's lighter. So the first thing they're going to see is the offering, not the weight. The weight's going to be in the back of all this. But that bobber is going to be up at the top. And I like to leave a little, foot or so of belly of my main line out in front of that bobber, which allows it to track naturally down through the drift. So I'm going to have to hand this one out. Any questions as I go along with this? Yeah, go ahead.
What did you run a Yarny instead of like a cluster? Or?
I'm going to pass out. I have a few different offerings. So this is just one. I have this. These are just some. This is a great high water tactic just because it's bright, it's loud. You can I have a egg loop just above this Yarny. You can open that up, put a bait of eggs in there. some shrimp, things like that.
So if you were running just single one right there, how long would you put leader on?
I'll grab you one. Really big on contrast beads as well, which is this little guy at the top. So for me, it's roughly here to there. I'm like finger to chest right there. It's like 30 inches or so, 29, 30 inches. But that, I'll play with that. I don't get stuck on leader lengths because of, which we'll get into with other water conditions. I don't get stuck on just one, because as you get into low clear, you're going to want to lengthen that a little bit, get away from your weight, which we're going to get kind of away from the bobber dogging, which I'll get into in a second. So I'll hand this one out. This is just a nice single setup. You guys can take a look, take pictures if you want, do whatever you need to do there.
Okay.
Get this lock in your head. Hand this out to you. All set up. Another great one is the worm. Great high water tactic here. Bill Herzog here, but have you ever heard the story of the hissing cat? Oh, that's a good one. So your dog's in the backyard. It's a freezing cold. It's like 32 degrees outside, frost on the ground. Your dog's in the backyard in the corner of the yard. You come outside and you set a bowl of food on the ground, right? And he's like, I'm hungry, but I ain't moving for that. Now you go back inside and you grab a cat by the back of the neck and you throw him in the backyard. That hissing cat, that dog is coming after him. And that's what your worms and your spinners are. The steelhead, it's a reaction bite for them. They're a very aggressive territorial fish. So this is your hissing cat. These are the ones that really get their attention quick. You'll get your biter out of the hole pretty fast with a worm and a spinner. Subtle ones like the beads, the yarny and the bead, you can throw bait on that. That's really kind of getting them to, they see the profile, it's more like an egg, like a salmon egg, and then send a bait. It's something more for them to eat, you know. So they will strike on it on the colors in an instinctive way and a territorial way. But that's leaning towards more of their feeding. This is leaning more towards an angry, aggressive attack. So I'll hand this one out as well. Really similar setup. These are just different offerings on the bobber dogging setup. This one. I'm going to break out another little package here. Basically covered bobber dogging at the moment, but we're going to get into some other stealthy stuff. Any questions so far on what you're looking at?
How long until you decide, until you are ready for the next thing? If you don't have a bite or if you don't catch it?
Like next technique? Good question. So like I said, the aggressive, I would come through with the worm or the spinner first if I'm trying to get that aggressive biter. Then you want to come back through with like a, excuse me, I'm sorry. If we're in high water, you can start with those big aggressive things because you're not going to spook other fish that are in the hole, right? If you're getting into like the lower steelhead grain, low clear, you're going to flip that. You want to start with a subtle presentation, get fish that are going to, feed on something, see that little round presentation first, and then you kind of work your way up from there. So I would flip that from high water. You can start with a worm, start with a spinner, and move around from there. But I would flip that, like I said, with the as you get into more clarity of water, go a little more subtle to start. Yeah.
A question about the bobber dogging. How much do you actually lose doing that? Driving across the bottom. So.
If you're fishing, that's a good question actually. So your bobber stop is what's going to regulate that.
Yeah.
If you're dragging too hard and your stuff's just in the dirt and the gravel, you're going to hang up, right? The whole cool thing about this is you can get that weight to just barely tick, every couple seconds, tick, So it's got a nice average flow to it. If you see your bobber just doing this down the river, you're going to hang up a lot, you know. Play with your leader lengths as well. If you're in big water and you got it really short and it's, again, ticking like that, you're going to probably hang up a lot. So play with your leader lengths and play with your bobber stop. Make sure that if you're in a really soft run where you're fishing really close, you might even be, sometimes I'm fishing my bobber stop 3 feet, 2 feet off the bobber, you know. I just want that weight to be down there in the zone and kind of just barely slowing it down, not dredging the bottom. Another little thing I'm going to show you here. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
That's all good. I'm curious about the bobber dog with the worm and
Yeah.
how that weight on the worm affects drag.
I love that you asked that because one of the big things about the worm is the action of it, right? It's a big profile, and that worm, you want that thing wiggling around. So when we get in this big water situation, I'll shorten that leader a little bit at times so that weight, when it ticks the bottom, it gives that worm a little bit of an action. It starts to flutter that thing around.
For the bobber dog worms, or what about floating under a bobber?
Floating under a bobber, I would run a jig. I got one set up right here.
Got it.
I got some jig set up, so I'm going to go over as well. You know, 1/8 or 1/4 ounce jig head under an actual jig float, right?
Sure.
A little bit different than the bobber dog setup. I got that on it's called like a wacky setup with a corky in the front, so it gives it just a crazy action. But this is what I would run with a bobber and jig setup.
That's bad.
I got one more I'm going to show you. Bait loop open. I run it around that spawn sack. And then I just cinch that right onto the knot. What that makes is almost like a yarning. It makes it look just like a yarning. What happens with that, not only does the profile look nice, but it flips your hook up just like this. So as you're coming through the water column, your hook's not dragging down into the dirt. Your spawn sack's going to be a little more bouncy, right? You're not going to be dragging that hook. And then one of the biggest things I love, you'll see a lot of it for me, is the contrast bead. So I'll run a little contrast bead just like that. Gives it a little profile, great high water technique right there. It's a little contrast bead spawning, and I got it on a dropper just to show you guys the double setup. So I hand this out. But again, you can run this. You don't have to do this in doubles. You can run just the bead. You can pop that off and run just the spawn sack. You know, for me, like I said, when I'm running a boat full of guys, it's so much more effective to keep them fishing. And if I got 3 guys fishing through an entire run the whole time, I know there's not 2 rigs doubled up on the weight or on the bobber. It's so much more effective. So for me, a lot of times I'm running singles, but you guys that are bank fishing, this is going to give you probably a little more of a leading edge because you can play with different offerings. Something for the fish to look at. So take a look at that one before we move on. How are we doing? Yeah, go ahead, Ocean.
So with bobber dogging, you want your line a little bit more loose, unlike float fishing, right? Float fishing.
Your main line?
Yeah.
Yes.
When you're float fishing, so. But then with bobber dogging, you want your line kind of in the water.
Exactly. Yeah, I tell my guys, you want that bobber tracking downstream like there's no string attached to it. So give them a little bit of a belly out in front. I'm not talking like 5-10 feet where if it goes down, you got a lot to catch up to you, right? You just want like a foot or two that when it goes down, you can get to it, but you're not influencing that bobber. You're not pulling it sideways. As soon as you pull that bobber sideways, what happens is your weight comes up off the bottom and you're presenting completely different. You're out of the target zone. The number one thing about this, not only knowing where they are in the river system, 90% of this is presentation. If it does not look natural to a fish, they won't touch it. It's just, other than the spinners and the worms and things like that, you're getting an aggressive fish. But even with those, you still want to present it in a natural way, even though it's a large, louder profile. You got to give them a very natural look. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Nice little belly right in front of the bobber. What else we got?
For the weights, do you ever run a sliding weight, say like fixed on shoulder like that?
I will, and that would be more if I was not so traditional drift fishing. If I was feeling the bottom, and then you're feeling for a bite, right? That's where I get away from the slide. You can do this with a bobber dogger. This is just a really simple way where the bobber sliding, they can grab it. I'm not running like a huge weight, but traditional drift fishing, yes, I do like a sliding weight. Because when they bite, I'm going to get way more feel of it. I'm in contact with the fish, to the line, to the rod. So I'm feeling that bite way more not being absorbed by the weight. So that's where I would run more of a slider than I worry about it than with a bobber dogging setup. But
With that drip technique, do you put like a slider weight on your main? Is that what you're doing for your drip fishing technique?
oh yes, so it'd be like a barrel swivel. I would run that through the main line with a bead up against another barrel swivel. So my sliding weight would be sliding on my main line, if that makes sense. You could do it with a slinky or, you know, a little chunk of lead or, you know. That would basically, I mean, you could, if I were to take that bobber off and I would run a sliding weight right up against that swivel, I would take that 3-way off, or an actual barrel to a bead, and then another barrel swivel dropper for my weight. Yeah. What was your name? Sean? I got a trivia question up here if you want. I forgot. I've been trying to get everybody to come in, but I got a giveaway at the end of this. I'm going to come up and fill it out. But what else we got before we move on? Go ahead.
When you're in a drift boat and you're bobber dogging with clients, do you like to ever anchor up a lot, or are you most commonly just going with it?
Great question. I'll go right back to the board. So let's again attack before we move on high water. If how would I draw this? If I were to draw so right now we're looking at the side profile of the river, right? We got our rocks, we got our water, our fish are back. I got them back in the tail out here behind some structure. So I was to look down on a river, and my drift boat, say it's here. Sorry, I'm not much of an artist. So now I'm looking at the top of the river, right? And see I got some structure here, and the water's flowing around it this way. And in high water, I would position myself, if I got some nice soft flow here, which is, like I said, you know, you're inside of the fast water, I would start at the top of it, and I will work my way down the hole until I get back to the tail out. And I love that you asked that, because sometimes I'll hook fish that are laying on the side here, and I'll move, and even though I'm drifting all the way down to the tail out, every time I make a move, the drift changes. The way your weight hits the river, and as it starts to flow down, it completely changes every time you make a move down the river. Same thing with a bank fish. Like if you're bank fishing a hole, every time you move down a few steps, you cast, even though you're casting and you're running down the same water, every time you make that move, it changes the way your presentation looks to the fish. Many times I've stopped here, fished here, moved here, nothing, move here. My bobber's getting down here every time. But as soon as I get to right here, bam, all of a sudden I start hitting fish that are in the same tail out I've been fishing, just because the presentation changed a little bit. So high water, before I move on again, this is where I'm gonna fish holes a little longer, a little like you said, kind of move through each section of the hole, because they can be, you know, right here in the middle of the slough, they can be back, and then as water's dropping on high water, then you start to get fish that are moving, and that's where I'm going to spend a little more time on each hole, letting fish kind of come to me. And it's going to kind of flip-flop as we get into some of these other tactics, but that's kind of my high water. So great question. Good one. What was your name again?
Ron.
Ronnie?
Ron.
Ryan. Okay. Wyatt Ryan. Okay. Sorry. I'll remember this by the end of it. I forget everybody's name. It's in my boat sometimes. It's by the end of the day. So. I think we got the bobber dogs pretty covered. So you guys got any more questions about those? Now, one thing I'll say, I'm covering this right now starting with high water, but I will use this at times in some of the lower water, depending on the flows, and we're going to get there. But let's go to steelhead green. Steelhead green water, like I said, can be the most productive, because it's, you know, the visibility starts to show up. You start to get on the drop. Fish are coming in off the ocean, and they're snappy. These are especially coastal fish. You guys all coastal steelhead fishermen, I'm guessing? Maybe some here in the metro. I don't know. Mostly coastal. Okay. So anyway, these are super aggressive fish. As these move in, and then we get into this steelhead green, they do get aggressive. It's also, like I said, it's where you get the most traffic. You get the most pressure on the fish. So you're getting the most ideal for them to make a migration, and you're also getting a lot of pressure on these fish, which can make it, you know, very productive if you're right on the biomass. You put together the formula I'm talking about, ocean conditions, tide, and you can kind of put yourself in the predicament where you're where they're going to get to you, if that makes sense. So you want to float a section of the river that is going to put you in the best position for where they're migrating, how fast they're going to make it to you. High river, low river, things like that. Another thing about migration, the ideal temperature is 46 to 52 degrees. So that's another thing you want to look at. When you're looking at, when we come out of this, for instance, next week, and we're going to go into mid 30s, that water is going to, the conditions, the air temperature, and then the water temperature is going to drop. It's going to start to drop. So when we're in this higher, warmer flows, their metabolism has to burn a lot more to move, so they'll move slower. As we get into more ideal, that 46 to 50, which is a pretty small window, 46 to 52 is only a 6 degree influx, temperature influx. So anyways, as we get from here into what we're seeing next week, like that 34, 35 degrees, water starts to drop, then it starts to slow them down in a way that they're going to be a little more lethargic. They're moving on colder water. I don't think we're going to get into that kind of a cold water scenario very quickly because, we got a lot of this right now. So it's going to take a minute. We'll see what happens in the future. But as we move into this, the longer it's in that low temperature, low clear scenario, we're going to get into the slower part of their migration. They're not going to move as fast. So you're going to start moving towards the lower end of the river. There's an old adage, water high, fish high, water's low, fish low. But I'm trying to help you understand, if you put together the other pieces, the ocean condition, the tide, if you got a really soft tide, a really nice ocean, and you're right here, they're going to make up that upwards of 24 miles, right? They're going to travel much higher quicker. So you want to put yourself in that higher stretch of the river. You got a bigger tide, a bigger outgoing tide. You're in a freezing cold condition, and the ocean's rough, and we're getting into here. You're going to want to fish lower in the system. So the old adage does work, but there's more of a formula to it than just saying high water fish high and low water fish low. Make sense? Follow? Okay, excellent. Any questions so far? Okay. So these are our average flows. Now I got these fish. I don't know if you can see this. I got one moving out of the hole here. We got one. He's down in the meat of the hole here, and we got him in the tail out. The reason I do that is because when you get into that steelhead, the 2 to 3 foot visibility of a green water, basically that opens the entire hole up. Now you got the center, you got the soft seams, you got the tail out, you got the head of the hole. That's where you want to really start picking things apart a little more precisely each hole, because they have a lot more water to hide in when it's ideal for them. See, now they're not just stuck in the tail out because they're trying to hide from heavy flows and sediment. Now they got the entire river. They got little pockets down here. They can move up into the next hole easily. They can sit in the tail out. So you want to pick each one of these sections apart in detail, and then you'll start to catch more fish if you focus on it that way. Does that make sense? Okay, excellent. Any questions on the steelhead green high water so far? Okay, we're going to start looking at some low clear. One of my favorites. I love high water, but I also love low clear, because just like the high water, low clear is going to push them. They literally have, when you get into these back ends, the tail outs, even sometimes the meat of the hole, they're going to want to hide themselves, right? So at the head of a hole in low clear water, we have what's called bubble curtains. So you got that, that riffly, the water's flowing over structure, so it bubbles it up, it churns it up, so it gives them a spot to hide. So when you get into the meat of the hole, up in the heads, they're going to tuck themselves right in the front of that. So this is where they're going to slow down a little bit. They're going to hide themselves, and there's a lot to look at with this as far as pressure on the river, high sun. Do you have clouds, things like that they're going to feel safe in and move, or are they going to stuff themselves and hide? And another thing with this is, when you got boats in front of you and everybody's pounding these bubble curtains and these, because it really kind of narrows the amount of water that you have to fish down to very minimal. So it becomes little pockets here and there and little, behind structure, little bubble curtains. So you got to really kind of get out of the box with this fishery. And I've learned to love it, because people they just think they disappear, but they don't. They tuck themselves in places you would not even have thought of. The other side of islands, people take their main stem boat runs down, the run of an island. I'll stop on the head of it and I'll go to the other side and fish where nobody even thought to look at. And that's a lot of times where these fish are stuffing themselves. It's down in, really elusive areas, if that makes sense. So we'll get into some low water techniques. One of my first I'm going to start with, that if I was to walk up to a hole, bobber and jig is old school, super effective. But one of the most stealthy ways in a low clear condition is a sliding float with no swivel. You're going straight to the jig. I got an inline, this has got a 4.0 bumper. It's about 12 feet or so. It's my mainline braid. And with the slip float, see, I can bring this down. I can literally bring it all the way down to where I'm fishing, a foot or so into a hole, right? So, or I can run it up if I'm into a deeper hole. And I'll start with this a little suspended. I want to start as I come through the first run on a hole. If I, 4 or 5 feet deep, I want to start at maybe 2.5, 3 feet in case a fish is kind of suspended right in that bubble curtain. And I'll start inching my way down from there. And then if I see that bobber starting to lean forward, that means my jig's is dragging, and you want to get it up off the bottom. So start a little suspended and inch your way down through the hole as you keep running those bubble curtains in the head. We'll pass this one out. Check that out. I'll start going over some other tactics. The other one, you guys are going to love this. This is the traditional bead setup. And this is long. Bear with me. So I got this on a fixed float. I got that fixed with a bobber stop. And I can run that deeper if I want to, but right now I have it fixed to an inline weight. And it's about 6 feet down to a swivel. And then I got a little split shot right above that. Okay? And then it's got a bead. I will say with bead fishing in low clear water, I'm pretty predominantly hard bead. Because hard beads are going to get down into the head of this hole much quicker. They're going to sink a lot quicker than a soft bead would. So even though I'm running a little, split shot in the weight here, that's going to get down. But if my weight or my bead is kind of fluttering before it, gets down, it's getting down back here, I'm already past my fish. So I want to run a bigger, I won't say bigger, but I'm just going to predominantly run a hard bead with that so it gets down. This is an incognito, so it's got like a little soft shell on it, but the interior bead is hard and it's a little heavier and it sinks a little quicker. Another little trick before I hand this out, I'll show you. There are times when, say you got an overcast day and I'm the first boat down the river, or you walk up to a hole, nobody's around, nobody's fished it yet. And there are times where fish, if you got a structure like this in the back of the tail out, but it looks flat, like I got the water's just dead flat like this. If you got some structure back here, there's times they will sit, literally in a foot of water. They're not that tall. It's funny. So you can fish all the way in the back of this, and one of the best ways that I'll show you to do that is I'll take this split shot and I'll slide that split shot all the way up, either all the way up to the bobber or enough to where that's not going to be dragging, and then just my bead will hunt through that back into the tail out. So that's a very stealthy way to go approach the low clear water. This is one I'll hand out here now, but I'm going to slide this down just to get you an idea of what it looks like. So I'm about 6 feet. You can play with that length on that bumper right there, but I'm about 6 feet from the fixed weight to the swivel with that split shot above it, and I'm about 24 inches or so to the bead hook. So I'll leave that lengthy like that just to hand out. Another one I'm going to go back to, great low clear tactic is, again, I love that little contrast bead. The contrast bead and a spawn sack. And play with your spawn sack sizes too. There's times where not so much what the fish see, but the way that it fishes. If you're running again in the back of this and you got a big old 20 millimeter size spawn sack and that thing's just dredging the bottom, it's not fishing very natural. And, you know, make some different size spawn sacks. You know, some smaller ones and different things like that. But rig this one up, hand it out. Yeah. Same thing, but that's just down by the hook, the spawn sack, little contrast bead. I'm real big on that contrast bead. I know the bait, it works, but just getting that profile sometimes and the two together, just super deadly for me. Steelhead are really big on sight. Their eyesight is impeccable, super keen. Now it's a little bit of a long setup there. Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So what size bead do you usually run?
Good question.
A lot of people run bigger beads than, you know, we usually run like a small and medium bead. So.
Okay, great question. I have a plethora, and I'm ready to go with everything. It sounds, high water, I'm pretty much running big, right? I'm pretty much 20 millimeter, you know, and even into here. Again, if I am first down the river, you know, it's early light, and many times I've learned that 20 millimeter will still crush in low clear. They are very aggressive. Here's the biggest thing about steelhead. It's the profile, right? It's the round profile. And the quicker they can see that coming at them, the quicker they're going to get in line to attack it and grab it. They don't, you know, as they see it coming down the river, even in low clear water, as they see it come, they don't know it's 20 millimeters. You know, it's not going to spook them. They're just going to see it quicker, and an aggressive fish is still going to grab it. So I will still at times run a 20 millimeter in low clear. Now, in a pressured system, you know, you got 20 boats ahead of you. You got, you know, a bunch of guys that have come into a hole that fished it. Now coming in with something small and, you know, a little more discreet, you might pick up some fish that everybody else is they're getting pressured. They've seen a 20 millimeter 16, 18 go by them all day long. They see this little thing like, what's that? They get curious. Remember, they're like puppies. They don't have hands. And so they investigate with their mouth. So something that, you know, like, oh, what's that? You know, and they'll come and investigate and snap on it. You might catch a fish that's been sitting there getting picked on all day. And, you know, you're the one that catches them because you came in subtly. So think about your situation. Are you kind of, you know, the first thing that a fish is going to see, or have they seen a lot? And that's going to help you kind of analyze what you're going to use. Same with this in the low clear. Like I said, if everybody's fishing the same seam, sometimes you'll have little splits in a river, you know, a rock or, you know, little islands, things like that. It'll split it, and everybody's fishing that same side. You love it. You've caught 20,000 fish on that side, right? But it's a high pressure day. Fish the other side. Check out that other side because they're going to move out of where they're getting pressured. If they're getting hammered constantly over and over, they're going to move out of it. They're going to go somewhere where they're not getting, you know, pressured and picked on. Does that make sense? Excellent. Any questions so far? How are we doing on low clear? You getting it? Gonna go get it tomorrow? Or probably not tomorrow, but yeah.
If you can spot a low clear tomorrow, just let me know.
Yeah, there are some systems, I'm sure. Some of the there's some creeks and areas that do have steelhead that they might be clearing pretty quick.
Right.
Maybe not low clear, but you know they will clear pretty fast. There's some coastal rivers that, you know, they'll be within 24 hours. They're up and they're right back down into clear fast. So I'm sure you probably know of a few of those. How are we doing there? Any questions on spawn sacks and setups there?
Could you quickly go over this rig again?
Sure.
It looks confusing.
Okay. What part of it was got you?
I don't know. It's just so long. Probably it's the whole
Okay,
mind bender for me.
gotcha. So the whole idea with this is that even though it's a half-ounce float, that half ounce is staying at the top of the water, right? And so this gets you away from what that bobber dogger does, is gets that heavy weight down, and it's dragging to slow your presentation down. Where this is going to be that fixed float, you're going to see that going down the river, but this little tiny split shot is going to hold you down. You don't have the flow that you're dealing with in the high water, right? So now that I'm running that a little long, so that gets down into structure, and it's so small, it's not going to hang up, like the bobber dog and 1/3 ounce or a 3/8 ounce weight is.
Right.
And your presentation, whether it's a bead or a yarny or a spawn tag, whatever you're presenting to it, it's just kind of flutter through those rocks without hanging up as much. So it's just a very stealthy way of running through structure without dragging, heavier weights. So,
Thank you.
yeah. I mean, if you got any other questions, basically I'm running that fixed, like I said, but I can slide that up if I wanted to, if I want to get this half ounce down deeper into a big giant bucket, big deep hole, So it leaves a lot of options, and you can.
How tough is it to cast the longer you go?
It takes a little bit of a learning curve. I mean, I'm like 8 feet from, bobber to. So I always tell my guys when they're fishing this out of the boat, I'll reel up like 6-8 inches from the tip, and you want to kind of keep. And I run a little bit longer rod with this. So for my boat, I'm running 10 foot. From the bank, you guys can get away with like a 10-6, but you want to kind of lay it back over your shoulder like so, and really that half ounce weight's going to go so far, so you don't got to whip this thing hard. But a nice little soft lob, and then lay that presentation out on the water with a soft lob. It's not whipping around too hard, and you get a hang of it like really quick, and you'll learn to love it in low clear. And again, you can take these and apply them to high, and you can take the bobber doggers and some of these other the jigs and apply them to low clear. You can swap these two, because a lot of times, like I said, that water that's right in front of you, that's maybe 2-3 feet deep, this will stealthily come through, and you're not dragging that weight, like we talked about hanging up earlier. So if you feel like you're in an area that is highly structured and you're going to hang up a lot, this is going to be the way to go. It just stealthily runs through there without dragging bottom super hard with a big weight. Make sense?
Yeah.
Excellent.
What are your thoughts on floating jigs in high water?
Oh, no, absolutely. What I would do in that situation, I wouldn't run, which I showed you is the fixed float. I would take one of these floats. I can actually set that up really quick. It's not that hard. I would literally just take and snip this down to a leader length. So it would be on a slip, that's got a bobber stop above it, so I could still slide that up, and I can make this a leader length and clip on. What I would do in high water techniques, I would up my jig head size to maybe like a quarter ounce instead of like an 1/8 ounce, or get your jig head size a little bit bigger so it's going to sink down a little bit quicker, and use a sliding float rather than a fixed float. Because that way you have a half ounce weight and a bigger jig head size that's going to get you down in that hole quick, and kind of holds you there a little bit slower through it. So definitely a good way to do it. A good technique you can use in high water also. So great questions, guys. Great questions. Keep them coming. What do we got?
What's your preferred weight? I mean, it's probably different between rivers, but when you're fishing, what would be high, fast water? What do you typically run for weight?
For which technique?
I guess any of it. Recently, I dwindled down my tackle, and so I was just running 3/4 ounce sliding bobber for a while, and I found that I had to take some weight off of that in order to fish in some places. Even though the water was just raging.
Yes.
Gotcha. So that was a confusing situation.
Gotcha. So for the most part, I'm running for my floats like this, half ounce, because I'm basically, that's not dragging, right? That's just my float depth, and everything below that I'm playing with. So I'm pretty much running half ounce with that. Now bobber dogging, the CFS, or the amount of speed that you're fishing, I'll fish either, I got these set up, I don't know if you saw the difference. One's like this is a 3/8 ounce stick weight, and then I got these 1/3 ounce little round weights. So I'll play with that if I'm in some faster current, but I know it's fishy. You know, not like, you know, UPS brown, you know, out in the middle of that, but if it's like a little bit faster in between this, dropping out of that high into the, you know, into that steelhead green, I'll probably run these 3/8, and that's what I want to use that to slow the presentation down. The whole idea is this for the steelhead to key in on it and have a good look at it before they decide, okay, I'm going to snap on that. So that's the whole idea with bobber dog is you're giving them a second look at it, second to, you know, snap on it. So 3/8 ounce is kind of on the heavier side for bigger water. 1/3 ounce and kind of getting down to that normal flows, if that helps. Yeah. And then like the 1/2 ounce, like I said, for a suspended bobber, pretty much what I'm running predominantly for the rivers I fish. So yeah, but play with that. I mean, you want to see your presentation kind of a walking speed compared to the water you're fishing.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah. How are we doing? What's your name again?
John.
John and John. The 2 Johns. That's right. Yeah. Okay, so here's my bullet notes here. Okay, let's talk about not just these 3, but the in between. So you got high water that's going to drop into these normal flows, and then you got these normal flows that's going to come up into these higher flows, right? So you got the in between where you're dropping from here into low clear, and then low clear. Here's the one that a lot of people are afraid of, is the ones that go from low clear to here, or here to high water, the rise. Everyone's so afraid of the rise. Everybody's looking. This is where you get the pressure. They look at the graph, the prediction. Oh, it's going to drop on Saturday. Oh my gosh, we all got to go fishing. I got to ask the wife, can we go? Right? I get to tell the wife because it's my work. But anyways, everybody's afraid of this one right here, the rise. And this, I love because especially when you're coming out of this, the low clear, that's where you're going from. Generally, it gets low and clear because in the winter we have the colder temperatures, the water gets cold. Now we got migration slowing down, right? And as it starts to rain, water warms up, fish start to move, and they come up out of these, you know, heads of the holes. They start to move into the meat of the holes. They start to get a little more active. And again, we're not going from like, you know, straight up blowout like we had yesterday. You know, that's just going from here to CFS, you know, times infinity, right? Too much. But if you got a little bit of a bump and it's coming up a couple feet, 3 feet, tell you a little story. Actually, last year I had clients on a coastal river, and I'll have to show you guys the graph when we're done here. I got a picture of the graph that I took a picture of the day that I fished, and my guys thought I was crazy because it was just, I mean, they were like, it's gonna blow out. I'm like, trust me, I know some spots on high water that it's gonna produce. We hooked 7 fish, which wasn't setting the world on fire, but one of them was 18 pounds. It was a nice trophy buck. So it paid off, and they thought I was crazy, but that was awesome. So thanks for taking me, you know. Anyway, don't be afraid of the rise. Don't be afraid of that in-between stuff. On the safe side, I will stress that too. Be safe about it. If it's going to be, you know, look at the inches for the day. If it's going to be an absolute blowout, I advise not to. Don't go put yourself in harm's way if you're floating a river or wading into. Water's very dangerous. It'll take you really quick. So I say that with caution. Don't be afraid of the rise, but to an extent that's not going to get you in harm's way. Safety first, right? But don't be afraid of that rise because a lot of times that gets fish moving, gets them active, and they start to snap. Same with this, you know, the green up to the high. Many times I'll just go for it, and if it's like a foot of viz, I still produce fish. It's just, you got to know, again, where they're going to be. Put yourself in line for that biomass. Don't be afraid of it. Make sense? Excellent. How are we doing? The whole idea of this is you guys, I'm sure some of you guys probably excellent fishermen, right? You can be the best angler on the planet, but again, the best thing about this is learning how to put yourself in position. You can't catch what's not there, right? I don't care how good of an angler you are. I don't care how good of gear you got or how good your favorite color bead is. if you're fishing where fish aren't there, you're just not going to catch them. So the whole point that I wanted to go over with this is hopefully you can take this and put a little mental something in your mental tackle box and take away and be able to go catch not just one or two, but go catch double digits, up your game. So hopefully I'm helping you guys get there. But
I've been afraid of bobber dogging, and now after checking out your stuff, I'm probably going to go get myself at least one bobber.
Absolutely. It'll pay off. It's like I said, I grew up, my technique was drift fishing, spoons, and spinners. Those are the three things that I just walked into holes and I beat the holes to death. And like I said, I catch a fish here, a couple there, and they're very effective techniques. But don't get locked in on that, perfect a few, but have some other, things for your tackle box to get you outside of just those few things. It's going to open up so much of a range of all these different various water conditions, So yeah, feel free to check them out if you want to look at them a little more. You want to check out one of these? You get enough pictures? You get enough pictures of them?
I took a little video.
Okay. Okay. If you got any questions on the rigging on them too, I don't know if I explained it, but I basically run 50-pound. The reason I run 50-pound braid is a lot of it, you guys like by yourself can probably get away with 30, 40 pound. It's not so much the strength, but the diameter of that, it floats a little better and it doesn't tip wrap as much. So that's why I'm 50-pound braid here. Then my inline, for my bumper, I do a 20-pound mono. And there's 3 S's that I use for that mono. And it's sight, stretch, and slide. So your bobber's not going to slide on a braid because it's super limber, right? It's not going to slide down as well. So that's your slide on the mono. The stretch, you have no stretch in braid and very little in fluorocarbon. So being mono, it's the only part in my system that has a little bit of stretch to it. And then I'm getting away from the high vis, so that's your sight, the 3 S's. So that's one of the 3 reasons I use a monofilament bumper there. And then I'm going down to, depending on my water condition, if I'm high water, in here, 2 to 3 feet of this to 1 feet of it, I'll run like a 15, even 17-pound leaders. You can get away with it, right? They're not going to be as spooked. They're not going to see that line as well. As I get down into the lower clear stuff, I'm getting down to 12. If it's super gin clear, I'm down to like 10-pound fluorocarbon. Wow. And just lighten your drag up a little bit. So I didn't know if I covered that on lines, but that's just one of the things the way that I run it.
What's the weight on your bumper?
20 pound. I run 20-pound mono.
And what's the if the bobber catches the fish, what does the fish do when it's in the water getting hatched?
Well, it's probably not going to hook them very well.
The bobber.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm asking why.
Ah.
So with poles, you were saying for like 10, about like 9, 9.6. Is that still okay for bobber dogging?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My 10-footers, I'm running with that long setup, right? So I'm going to want a longer rod to get that up off, away from the tip of the rod, not hanging in the boat. And so from the boat, I'm running like my bobber dogging rods are 9/8. See the G Loomis IMX, these are 9/8 rods, and I can get away with a little bit shorter rod from the boat because I'm kind of on top of the water, and I don't want my guys sword fighting. So a little bit shorter rod I can get away with. From the bank, you're going to want a little bit longer rod, even up to a 10.6, because you're standing and sometimes you're fishing a little bit further away, and your min is going to be a little bit harder to get to. So you want the length of that rod to get that line up off the water, right? From a boat, I don't need that kind of length, and I don't want my guys, like I said, sword fighting. So I go a little shorter. These are 9/8. I go 10 foot basically is the length, the longest I'll run. Some guys do 10.6s, but for me, 10 foot works great for my longer leader setup. So, but yeah, 9.6 is fine. Even if you can do it from the bank, if you can handle it, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with bobber dogging. I will say, as far as like the action of a rod, you don't want a super stiff broomstick, but you also don't want a super limber where it's just like a wet noodle, right? You want to have a little bit of backbone for when that bobber goes down. You got something to set a hook, but you also want enough of a tip that it's not going to pull the hook out of the fish's mouth, right? So you can fight the fish, but it's not a broomstick and it's not a wet noodle. So a moderate action. These are 6 to 12, and they'll steelhead no problem. They're fine. You can get a little heavier, like 8 to 17 pound rods. Great. Some guys like from the bank like 10 to 20, because at a bank you can't really, chase a fish down as well as you can. You can go run down a bank if you got enough bank to do it, but it kind of limits your access to chasing a fish down. Or a boat, I can pull anchor and chase that thing as far as I want. So I don't need it as heavy as a rod in the bank or in the boat. So.
What hook size you're using for something like, let's say, a spawn sack would be?
Great question. So
you vary it with water.
Yes, with a bead like this. This is a number 3, and that's a mustad advantage bead hook, and I'll run up to a size. Well, let me just get into the beads and the spawn sacks real quick. I'll show you. Spawn sacks, I'm predominantly running a number 2. And that's just like an owner's siwash. So I'm a number 2 hook on my bait hooks. And then when it comes to beads, I will vary the size depending on the size of bead I'm running.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm running a 20 ounce, or I keep saying ounce, 20 millimeter bead, I'll run up to like a number 1, and I like to run about a 3-inch gap. Or 3-finger gap.
Really?
Yes.
What's the gap?
Oh, great question. So when a fish grabs this, especially with a 20 millimeter bead, if I'm down here at that hook, the size of that bead leaves no gap for that hook to get meat on the fish. If I'm on a smaller bead, you get a little more chance, but you get away from that hook, they grab this and this slides right in the corner of the mouth. It sticks them.
So they suck the hook and they hit that?
Yeah, when they grab this, it's going to stick them right in the corner.
That's the very part.
But the point is, if you have this big bead down by this, the gap of the hook is not going to stick them very well, because your hook size and the bead size, it leaves no room for that hook to get in meat. So a 20 millimeter bead, I'm running about a number 1. I will go down maybe a number 2, but that's kind of pushing. That's kind of small. So I'll go a size 1 for a 20, and then I'll go down to like a size 2 for like 16, 14, sometimes 12s, but now they have. Joe, how are you doing, buddy? Good to see you. I didn't see you sneak in there.
I stuck it like.
I will downsize to even a number 3, which I have on. Where are we at? Oh, I already grabbed it. Right here. So that's a 14. I'll downsize to a number 3 on that, which is a fairly small hook.
You're holding that bead on how with that spot?
Good question. I got a little glass bead here. It would take almost another seminar to show how to tie that knot. There's a little glass bead. I do an inline glass bead knot. You can look that up, though. There's a lot of videos on how to tie that. And then for the soft beads, I run a T-stop above that bead, and then slide the bead down over that. For a hard bead, I'll leave that glass bead and let that hard bead slide to it, because it can't slide past the little glass bead. That makes sense? So the smaller my beads are, the smaller I can get with my hook. You don't need a very big hook, because I feel like the smaller the hook, sometimes they penetrate quicker, and you'll hang on to them. Just set your drag right, let them run. It's the cool thing about, we were talking about the speed of a fish. You ever hook a fish and you see your bobber go down, and your line's right here, but they're jumping over here all of a sudden, because they're so fast. But a smaller hook like that, they can grab and set their own hook and be gone, and you don't even know they're there. So a smaller hook will penetrate fast and help you stick a lot more fish. I don't like getting into that size 1, but in bigger water, bigger beads, and presentations like that, you just kind of have to, because when you get that big bead off the side, it becomes like a pendulum too. So when they start to run, that thing is going to wedge that hook out of there. So I need the hook to be enough that it doesn't wedge it out of there, if that makes sense. Joe, I got a trivia question up here for a giveaway if you want to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is there ever a situation for steelhead in the winter that you're running 1-aught, 2-aught?
Worms. Worms, I will do that.
For sure.
In fact, this right here is this is a 1-aught right here. And then my spinners, I clip off I hate treble hooks. So I clip those off, and VMC came out with these swivels, first of all, before I go over the, I got too much in my hand. So yeah, worms, I'll go up to like a 1-aught, even a 2-aught if I'm running a big old 6-inch worm in big, heavy water. With spinners, I'm doing that. I'm clipping off that treble, and I'll put a 2-aught Siwash on there. VMC came out with these swivels that are crimpable, so I can crimp that on the spinner, and then I can tie them to that swivel, so I'm not getting line twist on that. So it's a great little trick for spinners. But so yeah, that's probably the most that I'll run a 1-2-aught hook. I'm not doing it on beads.
Sure.
I'm not going to do it on bait. I don't want that big, heavy, weighted hook down there dragging.
Right.
So it's going to be my bigger presentations, bigger floating things like a worm or a spinner or something like that. I can get away with a hook like that.
Where do you get those BIC?
VMC?
Yes.
The swivels you can find them right here on the swivel aisle. Yeah, they're pretty much they're in Weimar. They're everywhere now. Yeah, check it out. It crimps right here over the spinner. So one eye is open. And grip on. You use those for all kinds of things: spoons, spinners.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's a picture of that if you want.
Is that all your gear?
What's that?
Is that all your gear, or is that his?
Oh no, this is all mine. Yeah, this will be getting used here next week. Yeah.
If the fish doesn't get caught by anybody, how will it jump out the water if it's not caught?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I
That would
love
be a
jumping
tricky
out of the water,
situation.
buddy. I love jumping out of the water. We watch fish jump.
Any chance that we have to go soon, but I would like to have your business card if you don't mind.
I'll have that all set up right here. Absolutely. Yeah.
For that swivel, do you close it all the way, or do you leave a gap so you can change out lures?
No, I close it all the way. What I do actually, so if I'm fishing, I got a box. I usually have a box of spinners. Hey, buddy.
Look at my spin.
Oh, I love it.
Good stuff.
Beautiful.
Showing it off to everybody.
So I'll have a box of spinners that'll have a few of these crimped on already. So I'm not trying to change out my spinner by that swivel.
Right.
I'll have a box of spinners with those swivels attached to it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And you'll just snip and retie?
Yeah, or you lose them in the rocks. That's one of the most expensive ways to fish right there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because you gotta get them down where they are, right? You're essentially kind of drift fishing, a spinner down where they're at, and you do lose deer, but it's one of the funnest and most, aggressive bites you can get from steelhead. I love it. That and the yeah.
Why single hooks instead of treble hooks?
Grabs harder. Too much to grab. They're already as snaggy as they are, and I just feel like it hunts down through the gravel a little bit better. It doesn't hang up as much. I feel like it sticks fish a little bit better. They can kind of wedge out of troubles a little more. I feel like, but yeah, stick way more fish, and it doesn't hang up as bad with the single.
Do you ever run magnets when you look at your phone?
Good question. That was another thing. It was the next thing out of my mouth.
I didn't see it, so I didn't know if that was like a common.
Because that's a whole. I could literally spend a whole nother seminar and another day on plugs, because now we're getting into boat tactics, and there's a whole different type of water for that, and it does go really well, like we were talking about that hissing cat. That scenario. It's the instinctive, aggressive bite. You're backing plugs into fish that as they don't want to leave the hole. So as you get them backed up, it's a fight or flight scenario. So they're going to leave or they're going to snap on it. So in cold, low, clear water like that, or even the steelhead green, in this flow, even the big water, it's a big profile, it's action, it gets them. But in these, especially that low clear, it's that hissing cat scenario where they're going to come after it. It's a very aggressive snap. These, worms, plugs, you're getting fish that are pissed off. They'll come get it. So
You ever fish plugs from the side planer from the bank?
Yeah, I don't know if I could tell you the last time I bank fished. To be honest, I used to a lot more, but I don't mess with that very much anymore. I'm just, because it's my living, I'm in the boat 200 plus days a year, so.
Thoughts on the side planer then?
It's got its place. You got to have a nice run for it. You got to have enough, leeway from the bank, not a ton of structure, and it's a nice run where you can get that thing out there and run that long setup. So it's definitely got its place, and it's got an effectiveness to it for sure.
So, quickly for you, when you go through a hole in your bow, do you ever follow up with some plugs going through it? Just
Sure.
Clean it out, or
Absolutely. Yeah, but the first thing I'm going to do, because for me, I will, and I do it more for salmon, but I like my guys, when I'm getting into steelhead mode, it's a hands-on thing. I want them to work, and that's the fun of steelhead. I feel like when you catch a fish in hand, there's a little something more special to it. So I will plug fish, but I predominantly am, if I'm going to run something similar to the plug idea, I'm just running a big worm or a spinner, a big profile that's going to have the same effect of what a plug would do, in a sense, So the most part, I do, but I do a lot more hands-on fishing with my clients. So, hope that helps. If you wanted to do it, I would have no problem saying, if you wanted to go plug fish, I leave that to my clients too. If that's something they wanted to do and wanted to learn, like you got a drift boat, hey, I want to learn how to plug fish, absolutely. I'll spend the whole day plugging down the river. That's what somebody wants, So
I saw one of your soft bead setups had instead of like a traditional bobber or bead stop or a T-stop, you had a bead with a very interesting knot under your soft bead.
yeah, John just asked that. So that's it's an inline bead knot. Look it up online. It's basically you make a loop and you're making 8 loops around with your hook and with that bead in the center of it, and you cinch it and you end up with 4 knots on the side of it, and that locks that bead with the perfect gap, from your hook. Now with a hard bead, I can do that because it can't slide past it no matter what.
Right.
With a soft bead, I put a T-stop up against that, so the T-stop can't slide past that bead, and then the soft bead sits on top of that. It really just locks that bead into place and it doesn't move. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. How are we doing, guys? Excellent. I think we're pretty close. Yeah, we're about to wrap it up here, guys. If I can say one thing, thank you guys for one thing, but again, this was just to give you something to put in your mental tackle box to take with you to catch, more fish than hopefully this year than you have in the past. Apply these various techniques to the different water conditions. But I want to leave you on this. Steve Vaughn, in an interview, was asked, "Are you still a student?" And he said, "If I ever stop learning, I'll quit." So I didn't want you to come here thinking that I know everything, and don't go into this thinking that, I know it. It's just, there's a constant learning curve every day, every week, every water rise, every drop. Just go attack a couple scenarios or systems, take a few tactics that I've taught you, perfect those, and then learn from there. Just keep learning. I love that quote because if, you stay humble about it, you'll keep learning and you'll get better as you go. So thank you guys for coming. Did everybody fill this out? All right. I got a mouse around. I got a table set up for arm wrestling if we got a tie. So. All right. Let's see what we got. So it looks like John Barnack, 30 miles per hour. Nailed it. Or close. You were 5 miles an hour. So I was telling the guys, 0 to 26 and a half feet. And it's approximately 35 miles per hour.
35 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go, John. You got your price back here.
If you ever want to have fun, go hook a wahoo.
And you don't even have to arm wrestle nobody. Good job, buddy. Enjoy. Go catch some fish.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank Fisherman's Marine as you want. One thing. There's a 15% off for coming. And the only exclusion they said was no sale items, gift cards, or electronics. So you guys can go shop and get geared up for the season and go catch some fish. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate you.
Is there a target here?
Oh,